The city of Vancouver is no stranger to hosting global events, having hosted the 2010 Winter Olympics and the 2015 Women's World Cup, and now they welcome the world again. And for the first time, the Canadian men will be playing a World Cup game in the city as we welcome you to Bet365 for the win right here on One Soccer. A beautiful home for a beautiful game. I'm your host, Annie Petrillo, and we have a cast of characters who are going to be joining us on the show today. Coming up in a little bit, Arash Madani. We'll talk a little bit more about Canada's next match against Qatar. We'll also talk the legend, Lionel Messi, and his opening game and that hat trick. Oliver Platt will join us from Toronto Stadium. He took in the Ghana-Panama game live. We'll get his thoughts. And shortly, Christian Jack will be joining us. Of course, he is following the Canadian men's national team. He'll bring us the latest from training as well as we are on the eve of Canada's second game. And in studio, yes, Gareth Wheeler, Jordan Wilson, joining me live. And you know who's also going to possibly be joining the team tomorrow on the pitch? Well, that could be the captain, Alphonso Davies. Jesse Marsh saying he's available. That doesn't necessarily mean he starts, Wheels, but he's available. What make you of that?
Pleasantly surprised by this news. I think that a lot of people, including myself, were it was suggested strongly to us that it would be very unlikely for Alphonso Davies to play during the group stage. And the fact that it looks like he's a little bit of ahead of schedule, I should say, is a really good thing. You're right. We're not sure if he's going to play. I'm not sure what the will he or won't he during the week was all about, because Jesse really didn't make a big deal about it during the press conference. Just a short answer, yeah, he will be available. But this is the approach that they should have taken from the outset. Be deliberate. You don't have to be definitive, because saying a player's available doesn't mean that he's not going to see the field at all. I'm going to be honest with you, I'll be surprised if he plays tomorrow. Against Qatar, you're a significant favorite. This is a team that you should beat. It's not just about playing Alphonso Davies, it's about how he reacts. The issue is being 3 consecutive injuries, basically, in a short period of time, that makes this a recurring issue. And that's where the concern is. I think that I'd prefer to see Davies a little bit later on when the games start to get a little bit bigger and you're playing better opponents. But this has to be seen as good news for Canada.
Yeah, it has to be seen as good news. A week ago, we weren't even thinking about this, and then now potentially he's going to be in a tracksuit doing a couple warm-ups, doing a little juggling that we saw there. Of course, those are great, that's great news, and it's going to be great vibes for Canada. But I also think, Wheels, Andy, what would another week do? We shouldn't have to use him yet. Go take care of business. If you're Ali Ahmed, if you're Buchanan, if you're those flank players, go handle your business tomorrow against Qatar, and you get Alphonso Davies getting another week of training, another week of those massages, those deep tissues, making sure that hamstring's good. So maybe Switzerland, that's the 20 minutes, or maybe you guys top the group, round of 32, you're playing in Vancouver, his home stadium that he grew up in, right? So I think the team needs to maybe do him a favor and just keep him in that tracksuit nice and cozy and take care of business tomorrow.
I do like how he's going to be on the bench. I felt for him in Toronto, just seeing him kind of like off to the side. Like the fact that your captain, your best player, is going to be wearing the kit, going to be part of the warm-ups, going to be part of the setup. It's going to feel more comfortable, I think, with him around. So I'm thrilled for him that he gets to be part of that experience and progress. This is a real good thing for this team.
All right, well, from Vancouver, let's bring in Christian Jack now. And obviously, KJ, you've been following this team, and you've been seeing Alphonso Davies go from these different levels of training, and now with Jesse Marsh saying he's available. Just what have you made of the way he's been training and to get to this point to get himself ready?
Absolutely not surprised at all at Jesse Marsh's announcement that he is available to play. He later went on to say in his press conference that we do not want to put any of our players at risk. And when asked and used the word, is things situational, he nodded his head, didn't directly answer that particular part of that question in the press conference. But it's what we talked about a little bit yesterday. You know, look, ultimately this is Canada's massive game in this group because they've got to win the game. And you know, this is an opportunity that if you need Alphonso Davies, you can put him on the bench no matter what. You don't have to name a certain number of substitutions. You don't have to declare whether he can play from the start. I expect him to obviously be on the bench and it to be that name, that word, situational. And ultimately, if you are up against Qatar, you're leading and you're comfortably ahead, then why would you need him? But ultimately, he is a massive weapon to have off the bench if, you start to press the, the danger button, and you need to have a little bit of a panic button there in the second half if you needed a difference maker. So no surprise to me. Hasn't had that much training, certainly from a physical contact point of view with his teammates for what we've watched as well. So I don't expect to see much of Alphonso Davies, if at all. And if we do see him, maybe that's not necessarily a good thing for Canada in their situation against Qatar here on Thursday.
I was wondering that too. I feel like it depends on how that game's going to go against Qatar. And if you do see him, maybe that means Canada really needs him, and that may not necessarily be a good thing. But what could help Canada, of course, is if they establish a lead, a comfortable lead. And again, somebody who does that and can score goals, at least is expected to, is Jonathan David. He leads the Canadian men's national team with 39 goals. He leads that program. But of course, KJ, the big talk has been the fact that he was taken out of the game in the 61st minute. That's been the story all week, right?
It has. It's been the story for a lot of reasons, because this is what you talk about around big players. The big players have high expectations, and we've already seen a lot of big players develop and star at the World Cup already. We can go through the long list of Kylian Mbappe to Erling Haaland to Lionel Messi and Harry Kane. Ultimately, the big players have big expectations to need to step up. I thought that Jesse Marsch was quite measured and fair when asked about that. He didn't necessarily criticize the fact that the attention is on him. He drew attention to the fact that he did withdraw him quite early, and he's not done that very often at this World Cup as well. And I also thought later in the press conference, and this wasn't what the clips were going to show you, was when he talked about it being a different opponent, they're going to need more combination play around the box. And I think that was more of a nod towards seeing Kyle Larin in the starting 11, a player that Jonathan David likes to play with. But yeah, here's what Jesse Marsch had to say when I asked him about Canada needing to do more to help Jonathan David. After all, Jonathan David has done a lot in the past to help Canada.
There was some questions after the game on taking Jonathan out. There haven't been many times that I've taken him out of games, and it's mostly because he's such an important player for us and a catalyst for everything we do in the attacking part of the pitch. There can be moments where a player has an off day and it doesn't really come quite together for him. But our belief in Jonathan as a player and who he is and what he means to our team is massive. And then, we're trying to do little things to get him more around the goal, to get him more looks. Look, the dude Jonathan has scored a heck of a lot of goals, right? So I know that there's been some criticism of him in whether it's in Italy for Juventus and all this, but for me, he still had a good year there. And he still scores goals for us and sets up plays. And I think he leads the team in goals and assists since I've been here, right? And probably minutes and dangerous and XG and every attacking category out there. So, of course, in the biggest games, we want him to score. And he will. And he has. And he won't stop. So he's still young. At the end of his career, he's going to have, 60, 70 goals for the Canadian national team. He's not done scoring, people, okay? So get ready. Just put your seatbelts on and get ready.
As you'd expect, Jesse Marsch completely backing his striker, Jonathan David. But I think the more important thing is how do they help him around him, and some of the things that he got into there, particularly making sure that they've worked on that combination play around the box and getting Jonathan David help. I think we all expect maybe Jonathan David will get his moment here, but it's clear that it's been a story. 39 goals and 78 caps, as we said. But more importantly, the Kyle Larin factor comes into this. And remember my interview that I did with him, guys, not that long ago in the March window, when they were both said how much they like playing with each other. As I said earlier, they've got 25 goals between them in 35 starts. And there's also been some talk around here about the Sweden plan with Gyökeres and Isak and how they got the best out of each other in a double striker formation, although it was a back three in that game to get the best out of them. So potentially will we see Canada in possession with a back three and maybe having Buchanan on the right, bringing Larea on the left, and maybe bringing Ali Ahmed on there as well to do that. So into the midfield for Larea. So keep an eye on that as well, where we may see them play with a back three in possession. I don't know what you think about that, Jordan.
How I really feel about it, I feel like if you're going to go and play a back three going against Qatar, I don't really love that. I also think when you look at the past match with Jonathan David, why he got taken out, it's because there's no space. It's going to be way more condensed tomorrow against Qatar as well. The way that they play, the way that they're so focused on that middle and making sure that teams can't go and penetrate. So again, that could be a tough situation for Jonathan David Wheels. When I look at it, not having space and not being able to be fluid and free around the box, that has been Jonathan David's demise. Like when he's able to be free flowing and get shots on goal, that's when he comes to life. But in the system, he doesn't really do that, right? And when I think about it, I think the biggest thing tomorrow is I want to see Kone in more of a progressive role. They don't have an answer for him, Qatar, the way that he can drive forward and dribble, but he needs to be the guy supplying, whether it be Laren or Jonathan David, some service. But again, I think tomorrow the real test will be how Canada does well on the flanks, but how quickly they can get balls in between certain spaces. And it's going to be condensed tomorrow. It's going to be really difficult for Jonathan David to try to go and thrive in that number 10 role.
What hasn't come out is a proper explanation of what's going on. What's wrong with Jonathan David right now? I mean, I think we were early on it, speaking in the previous, well, in the first window of 2026, about how he wasn't getting enough touches on the ball. And we've documented how far he drops deep and how I see him defending in his own end more times than not. Like, he's not Harry Kane. He plays a very different way. And, you know, Gyökeres, and he said, that's $200 million worth of strikers. Like, yeah. David and Kyle Laren are not that. But we have seen a better version than this. Kyle Laren's really struggled under Jesse Marsh. Now Jonathan David's fallen into the same trap. Is it system? Is it just a player that's out of form? Jesse said that he had a good season at Juventus. Didn't finish the season very well at all. Last 15 games or so, really struggled. Started off the season, I think there were some real highlights. Is he out of form? Is he out of fitness? Yeah. Like, he looked a little bit heavy to me when he was playing, a heavy touch. Look, I'm just trying to pinpoint what the issue is here. Because if it's system-based, then this team hasn't shown that they're able to use Jonathan David in recent games when they play better competitions, when teams have sat back a little bit more. You're playing Colombia, Ecuador, Australia, Tunisia, better defensive teams than the ones that they played before. Have the opponents just adjusted and Canada haven't adjusted their system, or is it a player out of form? Which one is it?
Tomorrow's such a massive moment for this program, but I just wonder why you see different teams. I'm looking at England, the way that they played today with a 4-2-3-1. Why Jesse Marsh is married to this 4-4-2, and why can't you figure out a way to maybe put Jonathan David in a position where he thrives, which is as a lone striker? Why couldn't you put an extra midfielder and put Saliba in there with Eustachio and play Kone high? No, but we're saying that because Jesse Marsh has said that, but I don't understand why that can't be a situation. You could still go against Switzerland and play with two up top, but tomorrow when everyone's thinking, how is Canada going to score? How do you get the best out of Jonathan David? And the answer that everyone would say is play him in his proper position. Why couldn't you do that? Like, that's where I'm like, I get that you want to play a certain way, and Jesse Marsh has been adamant, oh, I want to see Jonathan David at the 10, but does he look joyous? Does he look like his best self? Why couldn't you just put him in a position where he can go and thrive? That's a question that I want to answer. If Jesse Marsh could tell me that Jonathan David is way better at the 10 than he is at the 9, then cool. But that's not the case. That's not what we've seen, and that's not the Jonathan David that we saw against Bosnia-Herzegovina.
He's the most important player on the field tomorrow.
Like, you got to put him in the right spot.
He's the most important player on the field.
Put him in the right spot.
Switzerland let them hang around. Like, Canada needs to be clinical, and they need their most creative player and their best attacking player, and Jonathan David, to lead the way.
Well, we always knew, and we actually said this after that draw against Bosnia and Herzegovina, that this was going to be a pretty big game for Canada. Then, of course, Qatar go and get that point against Switzerland, and it feels pretty unanimous that a lot of people are saying this is a must-win game for Canada. And that is exactly what Jesse Marsh was asked earlier tonight. Just how big is this match? Is it the biggest ever for the Canadians?
Look, I appreciate that everyone in the media understands the gravity of this home World Cup. If I were to think of my time here and the history that I know about this program, I'd think the women's gold medal game and winning that at the Olympics, I think was a huge moment. I think our semifinal match at Copa America, I think the matches and experiences that they had in Qatar. So, look, we know that given our group being so tight right now, that every moment and every point matters. And we're focused on that. We're not trying to be overly magnanimous. We're just focused on the match and about Qatar and what they're good at and what we want to try to limit from them and how we want the game to look.
Christian, you know, it's hard to begrudge a coach who's trying to keep things level-headed, you know, with his team heading into a pretty big match. But that's our job. We get to talk about it. So how are you feeling about this match tomorrow for Canada?
Well, it is undoubtedly the biggest game in the history of this men's program. And I understand maybe why Jesse Marsch doesn't want to go there. In a press conference where he later said, you know, a lot of other coaches just kind of bite their tongue and don't say what they think. I just say what I think. I don't think he said what he thought there. I thought it was a realistically quite a measured response for a reason. Because he also said in the press conference that last week, and he admitted, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was a little bit crazier than it has been here. He said it's a lot calmer here, that last week there was a lot more demands on the team around the media and a lot more attention around the team. And he had to calm them down at halftime and remind them why they're here. And he hasn't felt like he needed to do that here. So then on the eve of the biggest game this team has ever played, why would he go out there and name it that? I don't think he wants to do that at that moment as he's trying to protect the pressure on his players. I've seen it all week. That's why we haven't got to speak to him. That's why we've barely got to speak to many of the players and make them available. They don't want to make stories. They don't want to create noise. And it's up to us to do that. You know, this is a manager that criticized the media for their reaction last week about Ismail Koney getting sick and the media taking advantage of that to talk about it. That is a good thing if we're trying to turn the sport the way that it needs to go. You know, if a major hockey player who plays for the Leafs sneezes and misses a moaning skate, then people are going to talk about that and make it a headline. So we're going to do the same in a World Cup at home. And that's what it is. Let's remind people, it's a World Cup at home, and they are a seeded team playing a four-pot team. This is what they are. Qatar were not a fourth-pot team. I know it was Bosnia, but they are effectively in the rankings a fourth-pot team. In the history of the FIFA Men's World Cup, host teams get through unless you're named South Africa or Qatar. Canada were classed that in 2018 when they were given as a host nation because they were a laughingstock ranked 80th in the world and they played one game in 11 months in front of 75 people in Spain. This is very, very different. This is 8 years on and expectations have risen quite rightly. People expect them to go out there and win. And yes, it is the biggest game. So it is on us to talk it up. And if Jesse Marsch doesn't want to do that, the expectations need to be there for them to go win. And hopefully we're talking about them getting to 4 points tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, KJ. Also, do you know who doesn't have to hear about running through a wall and rah, rah, rah right now? The players. No one questions their commitment on the field. It's the attention to details that are going to be important. This team focusing on the task at hand. I don't think you need to be the Kool-Aid man coming through the wall going into this game. I just don't think that's a way forward. This is a first for Canada at a World Cup, that they've been this significant of a favorite to go out and win a game. They were the favorite for the first time in World Cup participation against Bosnia, but I still think that we were in the assessment stage with so many injuries and what was going to happen, home World Cup. But now we kind of know a little bit more. They've got their toes wet, and now they're expected to go out and win. The only way that, you know, this actually turns out to be the most consequential game in men's Canadian football history is if they lose. Like, it would be a catastrophe if they went out and lost this game based upon, KJ said it, the expectations of what this team should be doing right now. They're -3. And Qatar to win this game is plus 1,000, Jordan. Like, they are significant favorites. So it's no excuses. Attention to detail, go and just win the game.
I agree with you, Wheels. Jesse Marsch answered the question as managers answer the question, as footballers were trained to do as well. Never get too high, never get too low. After a win, you can maybe celebrate for the night. Next day at training, you laugh about certain moments. But again, you try to stay in the middle. So I get why you answered that question. However, that's not the truth. This is the biggest game. We know that. The vibes in the country, everyone knows that. The fact that this game is sandwiched in the middle. So if you go out and win and now you have 4 points, no matter what happens with Switzerland and Bosnia, Canada are that much closer to being in the promised land, to doing something that they've never done, obviously getting the 3 points, but being in a knockout stage and sitting well and sitting pretty in that stage as well. So I get it. Like, if you're going to go as a manager, you don't want your group to think about the outside noise and what it is. But the fact remains, when that whistle blows tomorrow, this is the biggest moment. And I hope that the players, even if they don't score in the first 15, 20 minutes, they just are even keeled. They consistently dig and dig and dig. Because it doesn't matter if it's 3-2 for me. Get the win, get the 3 points, and live on.
The positive that I would look at this is, and Switzerland, they were in complete shock. A lot of the, word and stories coming out of camp with that draw was they were just in shock that they didn't get the full 3 points. So if you are now Canada, that's a blessing to be like, look at what they were able to do at Switzerland. This was always going to be a big game. Now we know for sure, not that you ever do take an opponent for granted, but it's just a little extra fire under the tushies, as we say. But KJ, I'm going to leave the last word to you here as we put a bow on this segment.
Yeah, just a couple of final notes from the press conferences. Julian Lopetegui, who met with the media about 2 or 3 hours before that, was very, very positive about Canada. He basically came out and said they were overwhelming favorites for a reason, playing at home, and they've got a lot of players playing in a lot major leagues that his team do not have. So very much of a praise for Canada. And the other thing just about Vancouver, a welcoming city for them, both for Qatar and this team. And Jesse Marsch said, he talked again about a red out, making sure that the team, being Qatar, can not only feel the pressure from the 11 players that are playing tomorrow in black, but also from the amount of people in the crowd. So he's obviously expecting a massive advantage for the crowd to take him there as well. So we're on the eve of something special, guys. Hopefully we're recapping a great victory tomorrow.
Exactly. That's when we'll speak to you. Christian Jack out in Vancouver. He'll be taken in that game, and check in with the show Bet365 for the win after that. That's what you continue to watch right now. And after the break, Arash Madani joins the show to give his thoughts on Canada's next match. Kyle Larin stepping up, and Lionel Messi still doing GOAT things.